Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue basketball closed out 4th of July weekend with some fireworks as Kevin Savage, top 50 point guard in the 2027 class, announced his commitment to the Boilermakers. Purdue now has 2 blue chip commitments in the 2027 class. And over at 24/7 Sports, Purdue is the number 1 team in the country in the 2027 recruiting rankings. Obviously very early, but we'll talk about Kevin Savage, what he brings to the table, talk about Purdue's class a little bit with Savage, with Isaiah Hill, Purdue basketball recruiting as a whole right now, and then we'll look at the football side of things a little bit, where June brought a rash of commitments to Barry Odom and company. We're going to talk about what matters from that, try to put some context into things, where Purdue football stands going into a really critical year here. But if you don't already, be sure, follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. We're talking all summer about Purdue sports, about college sports as a whole. You're going to want to join the conversation there, especially as we get into football preview season, where you'll need to be sure that you're subscribed to the podcast. I feel confident in saying there aren't many podcasts that will do deeper dives into Purdue's football team going into this season, into the state of Purdue's program going into this season. I'm really excited about a lot of the episodes we have planned. My plan for right now is that I will be here with you every week from now all the way through the end of the NCAA basketball tournament. We've taken a few weeks off here over the summer. It's been a little bit slow from a news perspective, but we're dialed in here. I have a lot to talk about. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a podcast, and send questions. Anything you want me to talk about, Twitter, @BoilersBeyond, email, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. But as I said, Kevin Savage committed a little bit ago, about 2.5 hours ago as I record this here on Sunday evening. A really nice get for Purdue. Again, this is a top 50 recruit nationally. Point guard, about 5'11". He is a point guard. He really is. He can handle the basketball commensurate with what you would expect from a true point guard. I hesitate here. It's going to be really difficult to talk about point guard play at Purdue moving forward because Braden Smith has changed the game for what that position looks like at Purdue. Braden Smith broke the Purdue assist record halfway through his junior year. He was pretty clearly the best point guard in Purdue history by that point, halfway through his junior year. And, he went into his senior year with already a claim as the best guard in Purdue history, a claim that you could still argue to this day. Carson Edwards, Rick Mount, Braden Smith. If you've got another one, I'm all ears. But don't expect Kevin Savage to come in and be Braden Smith. That's not fair to pin on anybody. But Kevin Savage is a really high-end point guard. I'll be the first to tell you, I haven't seen Kevin Savage play in person, but everything you read about him is his competitiveness, is his intensity. And those are wonderful characteristics when you get someone out of high school, because you don't have to try to work on those at the college level. You've seen this with players in the past where they don't always have the for lack of a better term, the piss and vinegar that it takes to really elevate competitively at that next level. I think Purdue has had some guys in recent years where they're really good players and they want to win, but they're not guys who live and breathe competitiveness. And that's something that, by all accounts, Kevin Savage is going to bring to the table. He's a high energy, high level defender, and that's something Purdue needs. This has not been a great stretch of defensive basketball for Purdue. When you look at the last few years, Purdue's best players were not its best defenders. And that's not always the best thing to have. It's led to some outrageously efficient offenses for Purdue. Purdue's had awesome offenses. Purdue has scored the basketball incredibly well. And it's gotten Purdue a lot of places, mind you. I mean, Purdue's done an awful lot without being a great defensive team the last few years. But if you can get to the point where you get players who are quality scorers, who can be high-level offensive players that bring more on the defensive end, that's when you look at a more complete outfit. That's when you look at those teams that every year in March, you look at the teams that are the top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, top 15, top 20. That's kind of what you're striving towards, right? A team that excels on both ends of the floor. And Kevin Savage is the type of guy who can bring that. He's got quickness. He can move. He's not someone who is super cumbered by his height. Now, that's an important note here. Kevin Savage is not super big. He's under 6 feet. It's not the be-all, end-all. We just saw Purdue win a heck of a lot of games, more games than it's ever won in a 4-year stretch, with a point guard that measured in just over 5'10" at the NBA Combine. But Kevin Savage, like Braden Smith, is quick. He can change directions. He uses his body well. He's physical. He's physical. He's got some real good stuff to his game. He can score. He's someone who can shoot the basketball. Got some pull-up to his game. I don't know that he is a shooting heavy player, but he's certainly a capable scorer. And look, just from a big picture standpoint here, this is a very ready-made player. Kevin Savage is someone that you look at as a day one contributor, probably more so than Isaiah Hill, even if the recruiting rankings don't indicate that. Isaiah Hill has longer to go. He is an incredibly high upside. Isaiah Hill is as high of an upside player as Purdue has landed ever, maybe. I mean, it's a lot to say with someone like Glenn Robinson or Jaden Ivey, with all the upside in the world that he had before he got hurt. But Isaiah Hill's right there. He's right there. But Kevin Savage is a day one ready-made guy. I don't know. I don't know that he has the upside of Isaiah Hill, but there haven't been guys like that at Purdue lately. It's going to be interesting, though, and this is where I struggle to talk about this a little bit, because right now we have such little feel for what Purdue's basketball roster is going to be like moving forward. And by that, I don't mean the names, because right now, as it stands here on July 5th, the only player on Purdue's basketball roster that won't be here in 12 months is Caden Pierce. He's a senior transfer. He's going to play for Purdue this season, and he's going to move on. Everyone else has eligibility left. And the hard part is, now 5-5 is here. Everyone has a lot of eligibility left. You look at CJ Cox and Jakari Harris with the new age-based eligibility model. It's 5-5, basically. You have 5 years to play 5 seasons of basketball. No more redshirting, no more medical redshirting. Those guys could play another 3 years of college basketball if they so choose. They don't have to. Doesn't have to all be at Purdue if they don't want it to be. But those guys have that ability if they decide that that's the way they want to go. That makes this all very interesting. We don't know what Antoine West is. We don't know what Luke Ertl is at the college level. You've heard nothing but great things about both of those. I've seen Luke Ertl play. He's an outstanding player. But you don't know how Cox and Harris are going to do in more expanded roles. You haven't seen Antoine West or Luke Ertl play at the college level. Omer Meyer stepping into the point guard role this year. You have at the wing positions, the Rivers Knight, the Jack Benter in a bigger role. Jacob Weber at the big man spot. Raleigh Burgess, Daniel Jacobson, Sinan Juan. You have so many questions about where guys are going to fit in a bigger role. And that's what gets really tricky when you have the approach to roster building that Purdue does. And Matt Painter has done this as well as anyone. Purdue has been able to buck the trend of being very reliant on transfers, but you do find yourself in these situations where you are banking on a lot of internal improvement and guys to really step up in higher usage roles. it's really hard to look past this season because we don't know what this season's going to look like. There are a ton of questions about that. It's very, very fascinating, if you ask me. It really is. But nonetheless, Purdue has landed two really high-impact guys in this class, two really big fish. Frankly, players that Purdue hasn't always gotten. A top 50 guard out of Atlanta doesn't always scream Purdue. And Purdue had its connections with Jakari Harris, obviously, but Kevin Savage was kind of a guy that Purdue just locked in on and went and got. That hasn't always been Purdue's ceiling from a recruiting perspective in the past. Purdue hasn't done that a whole lot. A top 20 big guy from Indianapolis, Purdue's going to be in the mix with, but Purdue got Isaiah Hill without oodles of competition. It says something about Purdue being very different. Again, there aren't many programs doing this. There are not many programs super invested in high school recruiting at this time. It's a strange time in college basketball, but Purdue is zigging while others are zagging. Purdue is committed to growing through the high school ranks. Purdue has the ability to do that. What's the tricky part of this? The transfer portal is the biggest double-edged sword for coaches because you can flip things really quickly, but the expectation now is that you flip things really quickly. It's like in football. Curt Cignetti is the worst thing to ever happen to a lot of coaches because the expectation is going to be, well, this guy just won a national championship at a program in year 2. In basketball, look at what Dusty May did. Michigan won 8 games in Juwan Howard's last year. He won the national title in year 2 and parlayed that into an NBA job. It's not bad. Not many guys do that. That's not a reasonable expectation to have. But coaches are so invested in the transfer portal because they have to be. That they have to try to win right away. That's not saying Purdue's not trying to win, but Purdue is trying to build a program more so than just a winning team year 1 right away, flip the switch. Purdue is seeing real benefits from that approach. This is, as I said in the open, right now Purdue's number 1 in the country, 2027 recruiting class on 247 Sports. I don't know if it'll stay that way. As you look, whether this class is done or not, I don't know. Kager Knippel committed to Duke. Purdue is in on him. Purdue's recruited Ahmed Noor a little bit. It doesn't seem like anything's imminent there. But again, where you stand right now, you have a pretty full roster for next year. Now, that assumes real continuity that, look, you've been able to bank on it every year at Purdue. Purdue still hasn't lost a high-impact player to the transfer portal. It hasn't. I wouldn't consider Cam Heide and Miles Colvin to be that. I wouldn't consider Isaiah Thompson to be that after the 2022 season. You know, you had some guys who left to do COVID years elsewhere that told Purdue they weren't going to take a COVID year. Purdue hasn't lost anyone that's real high impact. Is that going to last forever? I mean, probably not. But until it happens, I think you have to feel pretty decent about Purdue's continuity. So Purdue has some flexibility. If it wants to take another high school kid, it can. If you want to roll it into a transfer portal opportunity, you certainly can. But again, it's really hard to look ahead with a whole lot of clarity other than just the obvious fact that Purdue is putting together some rosters with some real talent here. Omer Meyer's a big-time player. Daniel Jacobson has the potential to be a really, really big-time player. You look at Jacob Weber, Luke Ertl, Antoine West has some real upside, as does C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris. You're looking at a situation where Purdue has real ability in its program right now. Purdue is amassing talent at a high level. That doesn't guarantee you anything, mind you. You can see all across the country examples of teams to amass immense talent and do a whole lot of nothing with it. But right now, Purdue's been excellent. Purdue's in a really good spot. Matt Painter has built a remarkably stable program, one that you feel really good about year in and year out, competing at the Big Ten level, competing at a pretty high level on the national scale, and it doesn't really get a whole lot better than that. On the other hand, as we really start to transition, we're through the 4th of July now, so I'm in football mode. I don't know about you guys. I'm not a summer guy, so I am ready to get to August, get to practice, get to September, get these games started. But June is an interesting month now because it is when all of the high school recruiting commitments are done, basically. I saw a tweet the other day that I think over 95% of the blue chip recruits are committed now. It all goes down in June. Ever since the early signing period flipped to December, since the advent of that, all of the recruiting gets done really early now. And Purdue is no different. Purdue's football recruiting class is pretty well assembled. Obviously, it's not done. There are still players Purdue is recruiting. There are still flip opportunities and all of that, but Purdue's now at 16 commitments here in the class of 2027. And look, it gets really difficult to talk about football recruiting sometimes, right? It is not the easiest thing to talk about when very few of these guys will be day one instant impact players. At least to a certain degree, you hope not. In the era of the portal, you would prefer that you're not relying on true freshmen right away, that you can fill in some of these gaps with more players and with guys who are ready to play right away. But Purdue had a nice month. Purdue did have a nice month here. And what's interesting to me, you get a couple of blue chip guys in there with Caleb Elkins and Trenton Yancey. You have some good guys from the state of Indiana. You get a lineman from Westfield, Ethan Reyna from up at Andrean, a guy who's been Purdue all the way. You've got the quarterback from over in Illinois. Really interesting piece. You hear a lot of good things about him. Purdue gets a running back from Lawrence Central? I can't remember. One of the Lawrences, who's a little bit under-recruited. But look, whatever you make of this recruiting class, it is what it is. Because on one hand, there are some really intriguing pieces here. On the other hand, the recruiting rankings tell a story. And that is that Purdue is 16th in the Big Ten. Granted, they're all bunched up pretty closely. You've got less than like 0.4 of an overall class ranking between Purdue and 12th place. But they tell you that Purdue is recruiting in the bottom third level of the Big Ten. If you break up the 18 teams into 3 pods, Purdue is in the bottom third when it comes to recruiting rankings. The truth is, things don't change all that much in college football. They just don't. It is really hard to be an outsider and really bust into that top level. Teams have done it. Not easy to do, especially in the modern era where money is such a big part of it. Not necessarily from high school recruiting, although there was a great piece over at On3 this week about kind of the upper level of high school recruiting, guys that are in the top 100, the blue chip recruits. Really good piece over there about what it took in June this year. But for Purdue, you still need to outperform your expectations. You need to hit on the right guys. Because if you're going to try to go Jimmy's and Joe's with everyone else in the Big Ten, you're probably not going to win that game. It's why Purdue has had so much success historically playing a different game. Think about Purdue in the 1990s, in the late 90s when Joe Tiller came around. No one had bubble screens in the Big Ten. No one had spread offenses, but Purdue did, and it worked because other teams didn't do it. Purdue saw a conference full of big bruising linebackers and safeties that were much more just physical hitters than they were cover guys, and Purdue threw the ball all over and had a ton of success doing it. Purdue was able to do things differently. Go back to the 60s. Teams were running the wishbone. Purdue's throwing it around, doing things differently, having great success doing so. This is football. It's not basketball. And you've seen Purdue have so much success with unheralded guys in basketball, lowly ranked, not ranked. Football is a different sport. In basketball, you can put 8 guys out there and have yourself a really great season. Football, you need 50, 60, 70 players. It's a whole different ball game. There are guys who fall through the cracks, and when you're at Purdue, you have to capitalize when you find the good ones. Drew Brees, Ryan Kerrigan, guys like that. There are plenty of other examples. But think about what you've seen from Purdue in recent history. Some of your more high-impact players. David Bell, George Karlaftis, Rondale Moore. Those guys were big-time recruits. Milton Wright, before he had his academic problems at Purdue, he was poised to have a really good career. Big-time recruit. Nick Scorton blew up towards the end of his high school recruiting when he went by Nick Carraway. He got up to a 4-star recruit, came in, impacted right away, and now he's with the Carolina Panthers. You're going to have guys who are a little more unheralded, but you have to also hit on those guys that are higher level. And when you look at this class for Purdue, you need some of those guys. You need your Caleb Elkins, an in-state guy at safety, to come in and be a hit. You get Trenton Yancey out of Texas at wide receiver. Smaller guy, but quick guy. Can he be someone who makes a big difference? You look up and down this class, there are some really intriguing pieces. You get a 6'6" edge rusher out of Arizona. Give me. Love that. Love the potential there. You've got a couple of big DBs in this class. Bet on the potential. You got a 6'2" DB out of California. Fantastic. Bet on some of these traits. You get a Catholic League offensive lineman out of Chicago. That's awesome. Take it. Got a 6'3" corner out of Ohio, Roman Combs. Lakota West, good program. Getting into the Cincinnati system with Patrick O'Brien from Archbishop Moeller. All of these are really positive things, but you need players who want to be part of the solution. Because too much at Purdue recently, you've had players who come in for a year and then dip. And frankly, you don't see them. You don't see them resurface that much. I was flipping through Athlon, and I was going through the Group of 5 conferences. And man, you look at some of these Group of 5 depth charts, they got the projected 2 deeps. The amount of players that have transferred out of Purdue in the last few years, I felt like those depth charts would be littered with Purdue guys. You don't see that many of them. You really don't. And that's not a great reflection on who Purdue's brought in, but it's also a reflection on what happens when you just transfer over and over and over again. Purdue needs guys who want to be part of the solution here, because it's no secret, right? It is no secret that Purdue football has won 3 games in the last 2 years. Purdue football hasn't won a Big Ten game since November of 2023. Times aren't great. They just aren't. But if you get guys who want to be part of the solution, and it's easier said than done in the transfer portal era, but you get guys who want to come to Purdue, want to be successful, want to bring Purdue's program back to some sort of relevance, then you've got a shot. Then you can really do something. You can really put something together at that point. But you've got to get there. And that's going to be the hard part for Purdue, is getting over that hump, getting guys bought in. But if you believe you can do it, and Purdue can do it, it's possible. It's more than possible. Then you should be in a really good spot. There are a lot of intriguing pieces here. But also, it starts with a better season than you're thinking this fall. You know, we're starting to get into preview season, and I'm starting to map out all of my preview episodes and all of that, and we'll be talking about it far more on the podcast here moving forward. You know, Purdue's got a win total of 3.5 this year. If you come out and post a 3-9, it's not going to be easy to generate a ton of momentum, and it's improvement. And that's what's difficult for Barry Odom and company here. But you got to find ways to get people excited, to get fans in the stands at Ross-Ade Stadium, to get fans talking about Purdue football again. That's a huge thing, man. There is not much buzz around Purdue's football program right now, and part of that is because basketball has been awesome. Purdue men's basketball has had success that the program has never seen before. Again, we spent the first 15 minutes of this episode talking about Purdue landing 2 top 50 recruits in the same class. Everything is going really well for Purdue basketball right now. But in this landscape of college sports, where we're at right now, you have to be competitive on the football field. You just have to be. You can't live in this, I don't want to call it mediocrity because it's been worse than that the last couple of years. But you have to be better than that moving forward. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see where Purdue goes. But I wanted to point out I was on with the guys at Inside the Pylon, Midwest-focused college football podcast. You want to go hear me talk Purdue football? We went about 40 minutes with them a couple of weeks ago on their summer six-pack series, talking Purdue football. Go check them out on their feed, Inside the Pylon. I believe it's ITP_CFB on Twitter. Had a blast with them. Really good time. I think you'll enjoy that. As I said, I think we'll be back here every week from now all the way through the end of basketball season. Got some basketball to talk about here. Planning on having a guest come on here shortly to talk Purdue basketball. And we're going to get really into football previews here. We're going to have our offense preview. We're going to have our defense preview. We're going to get Brett Ciancia on from Pick Six Previews. He does an awesome job talking about Purdue football, talking about college football in general. He's the man. We're going to dive deep into Purdue's schedule. I want to talk about college football and Purdue's place in all of it. Where does Purdue fit in going into the 2026 season? Looking back on a 5-year anniversary of Purdue's 2021 season when it won 9 games. Lots of good stuff to talk about. Send me over your questions. Send me your Purdue sports questions, comments, concerns. Email boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Twitter @boilersbeyond. I appreciate you guys. I hope you had a wonderful 4th of July. We're into the back half of the year now. Football is close. We're 2 months away. Looking forward to everything that's to come. Take care, guys. We'll talk to you next week.